So last night I was asked about something that had happened in the past that had been really valuable to me, or something that had really fulfilled me. And it was interesting that when I dug down deep and was questions that I found myself going to what I hadn't actually realized is probably one of the most important things that's ever happened in my career. And I was about 27, it was 1997, and I was working for Greenpeace in New Zealand. And I went as a volunteer, first of all. And when you see people on the streets today campaigning or raising money, I'm afraid that's our fault, because we started the Direct Dialogue campaign back then, with the idea of spreading the word and getting people to help with campaigns. And one prime example, they were all pretty shocking, which is why I ended up working for them first in Greece and then in New Zealand, because when you hear about it, you're a bit shocked and all you want to do is something about it. So this was particularly 6 incinerators across New Zealand back then, burning plastic hospital waste, and the emissions coming out were something in the order of about 130 times the recommended allowance that we had back here. And the one in Auckland, 10 women were dying a week in the surrounding area. Greenpeace are very efficient, and they actually created a business plan, or sourced a business plan to find out how this operator could do it in a cleaner, greener way and make 7% more profit. And it was an 18-year battle, but going nowhere, and was unfortunate, a really difficult situation. We did do an action, we did highlight it, we did show people what was actually going on in that area. But then we would say to them, could you please write a letter to the owner? And we'd give them the detail and just say, you know, we've got a plan, let's go for it. Now, this took a lot of work. There were 6 of them around the country. One in windy Wellington had a skip next to it where toxic ash would be there blowing around. And it was one of my main campaigns. There were lots of campaigns to address, and we travelled around the country and we would go onto the street and talk about various campaigns on the way. And this one in particular was my major campaign. So I would say to people, hospital waste has to go somewhere. It isn't great, but if you steam sterilise it, an autoclave system, put it in the ground, it's better than these dioxins going up into the atmosphere and causing these deaths and pollution. Travelled around the country, had the same conversation 50 times an hour for 4 hours a day, for 4 days a week, for 9 months. So a lot of talking about it. And a lot of people would have very different responses, but quite often would write the letter and be really shocked. Finally, when we came back to Auckland, and it was the last week of working for Greenpeace in New Zealand, about to come back to the UK, and working in the business district in Auckland on the street, just talking to passers-by. And this guy came up to me and verbally attacked me, created quite a scene and a crowd, and sort of up against the wall, not physically touching me, but just having a bit of a go. And he said, that's my brother's business. You're ruining and bad-mouthing, and you've been campaigning about it all over the place. He's creating jobs, he's got a business to run, and etc. And I was quite shocked. I hadn't obviously experienced anything like that before. But when he calmed down and backed off, I just said to him, if there's 10 women dying a week in that place, don't you worry about your brother being there 5 days a week, 50 weeks of the year. And he thought about it, and he looked at me, and his eyes filled, and he backed up and he disappeared. And then I think it was the next day, the owner of the companies rang up my boss, the brilliant Michael Sasbo, at the time, the dioxins campaigner, and said, right, where's the plan? And it was just important that sometimes with climate change and work and environment, that we are all too busy and that we have a lot to do, but actually you've got to look in the whites of people's eyes sometimes, and you've got to get into their hearts, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's something that we can't always easily do. But when we're talking about life or death, which we are, it's important to pursue. And if you haven't joined Greenpeace, I recommend that you do, because it's all about bear witness, look at the problem, find a solution, and let's make it happen.